We live in an age where we pride ourselves on our rationality. We believe we see the world as it is. We make decisions based on facts. We think logically.
But what if I told you that the foundation of this assumption is fragile? That the mechanism by which you perceive reality, your own mind, is an unreliable narrator? A narrator who is not interested in the truth, but in efficiency, security, and the confirmation of what you already think you know.
Today, we're going on a journey. We'll start with modern neuroscience and psychology to understand how our brains deceive us. And then we'll take a giant leap back to ancient times, to one of the most famous thought experiments in history, to realize that our struggle for truth is not a new phenomenon. It is the primordial human condition.
Today, we connect Plato's cave with your cognitive biases.
Before we get to the mechanisms, let's pause for a moment and be honest. Do you know that feeling?
You make a decision that you are absolutely convinced is right. It feels right, logical. And yet, weeks or months later, you ask yourself, how could I have overlooked that? Why do I keep making the same mistake in relationships, at work, or in dealing with myself?
There is this discrepancy between what we should know and what we do. We know what is healthy, and yet we eat sugar. We know we should stay calm, and yet we explode.
It often feels like we are passengers in a vehicle controlled by an invisible autopilot. We watch our own thoughts racing around in circles. We feel this inner restlessness, this constant mental chatter that comments on everything, evaluates everything, and above all, always wants to be right.
It's exhausting, isn't it? This constant attempt to squeeze the world into a pattern that makes sense. And when reality doesn't fit into this pattern, we ignore reality instead of adjusting our pattern. We often feel misunderstood because the world out there seems so chaotic, while our inner logic seems so clear.
If you feel this way, I have an important message for you. You are not broken. You are functioning exactly as you were designed to. The problem is not your intelligence. The problem is the architecture of your brain.
Let's take a look at the engine room. Modern psychology and neuroscience have a term for these systematic errors in our thinking: cognitive biases.
To understand why they exist, we need to understand what the brain actually is. Your brain is not a truth search engine. It is a survival machine. It has evolved over millions of years, not to solve complex philosophical problems or understand the stock market, but to let you decide quickly, is that a saber-toothed tiger in the bush or just the wind?
The brain is a cognitive miser. It wants to save energy. Millions of sensory impressions bombard you every second. If your brain consciously and rationally examined every piece of information, you would be incapable of acting. You would starve to death while you were still analyzing whether the berry was edible. So, the brain uses shortcuts, heuristics. These shortcuts are usually useful, but in a complex modern world, they lead to systematic errors. Let's look at two of the most powerful biases. Confirmation bias. This is the king of biases. Your brain loves consistency. Once you have formed a belief, whether about politics, your partner, or yourself, I'm bad at maths, your brain filters reality. It actively seeks out information that confirms your belief and ignores, forgets, or devalues information that contradicts it. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are. You see what you expect to see. Negativity bias. Our brains are programmed to give more weight to negative things than positive ones. This makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. It's more important to remember the one poisonous berry than the 10 delicious ones. But today, this means that a single critical comment under your social media post will preoccupy you all day long, while you forget the 100 compliments. It distorts our perception of the world towards the threatening and pessimistic. So we are biologically programmed to confirm our own prejudices and focus on the negative. That is the psychological reality. We are prisoners of our own neural shortcuts. And it is precisely here, at this point of realization, that science reaches out to philosophy. In the 7th book of his work Politeia, The Republic, Plato describes a scenario that is perhaps the most powerful metaphor for human existence ever written, the allegory of the cave. Imagine an underground cave. In this cave, people have been chained since childhood. They sit in such a way that they can only look at the back wall of the cave. They cannot turn their heads. Behind them, further up, a fire burns. Between the fire and the chained people runs a path along which other people carry objects, figures of animals, plants, tools. The light from the fire casts the shadows of these objects onto the wall in front of the prisoners. The cave echoes with the voices of the carriers. What is reality for these prisoners? For them, the shadows are the only truth. They give the shadows names. When they hear the echoes from the wall, they believe the shadows are speaking. They even develop a system. Whoever can best predict the sequence of shadows is considered the wisest among them. Plato asks us, are these people not like us? The connection. This is the moment where ancient philosophy and modern psychology merge. The cave is our mind. The chains are our cognitive distortions. They force us to look in only one direction. The shadows on the wall? That is what we consider to be reality. They are our interpretations, our opinions, our fears, filtered through confirmation bias, negativity bias, and countless other mechanisms. We mistake our thoughts about the world for the world itself, but we only see the shadows cast by the light of our limited consciousness onto the wall of our own projections. Plato goes further. He asks, what happens when one of these prisoners is freed? When he is forced to stand up, turn around, and look into the light of the fire. He would feel pain. The light would blind him. He would be confused. He would long for the familiar shadows. He would resist if he were dragged out of the cave and up into the sun. The process of realization is not pleasant. It is painful. It hurts to realize that what you have believed to be true all your life was only a shadow. It is the pain you feel when someone attacks your deepest political convictions with facts. It is the defensiveness you feel when someone tells you that your behavior is destructive, even though you feel you are right. If psychology shows us how the shackles work, and philosophy shows us that we are sitting in a cave, how do we get out? How do we begin the painful but necessary ascent? We cannot turn off our cognitive biases. They are part of our hardware. But we can become aware of them. The first step out of the cave is to realize that you are sitting in one. Here are 3 practical exercises, one psychological, one philosophical, and one spiritual, to loosen your own chains. Exercise 1. The Advocatus Diaboli Journal. Psychological. This exercise targets confirmation bias directly. When you have a strong opinion on a topic or are facing an important decision, take a sheet of paper. Draw a line down the middle. On the left-hand side, write down all the reasons that support your opinion. Now comes the hard part. On the right-hand side, you must write down at least 3 valid, strong arguments that contradict your opinion. You have to actively seek out information that contradicts your worldview. Force your brain to look at the other side of the cave. Exercise 2. The Socratic Pause. Philosophical. Socrates, Plato's teacher, was famous for knowing nothing but questioning everything. Before you react, whether in an argument, to a news article, or to your own negative thoughts, take a Socratic pause. Ask yourself 3 questions. Is what I am thinking right now a fact or an interpretation, a shadow? What assumption underlies this thought, and could this assumption be wrong? What would happen if I believed the exact opposite? This pause creates distance between stimulus and response. Exercise 3. Witness consciousness. Spiritual, meditative. This is the most difficult but most effective exercise. It aims to break your identification with your shadows.
Sit quietly for 5 minutes. Close your eyes. Observe your thoughts. But, and this is crucial, do not intervene. Do not judge them.
Imagine you're sitting on the bank of a river, and your thoughts are leaves floating by. You are not the leaves. You are the one sitting on the bank.
You are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that perceives the thoughts. This is the moment when the prisoner realizes that the shadows are not himself. Plato knew that the journey from the cave to the sun, to the real truth, is the most difficult undertaking in a human life. Your brain will resist. It wants to return to the cozy, familiar shadows. But the realization that your mind is lying to you is not the end. It is the beginning of true autonomy, the beginning of wisdom. Have the courage to turn around. Have the courage to endure the light. If you want to continue on this path, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss another stage of our journey. And write to me in the comments, which shadows have you already exposed in yourself? Thank you for watching. And remember, don't believe everything you think.